Football has been a huge connection for us. Both went to UCLA, both played in the NFL. We both have Super Bowls. We both played for the Raiders. Your personality is big, your body is big, your energy is big. Own that. It's like whatever you tell yourself is what you're gonna believe. Whatever you hear, just like that whiteboard that had all that stuff on there, accountability, discipline, consistency, never give up, right? It's what you feed yourself, like what you eat is what you're gonna become.
Welcome back to the best version of me. We're excited for today's show and the guests that we have on. Very, very excited for the conversation that's about to take place. My name is Daniel Hernandez. Along with my co-host, Edgar Miranda. Edgar, go ahead and introduce our special guest for today.
Super excited for all the youth that's out there striving to be an athlete. Because the next person I got, well, let me tell you, went to UCLA, played for Pittsburgh, finished off with the Raiders, and not to mention, his father won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders out of 3. Let me tell you, this guy comes from a breed of football stallions. His father was a superstar with the Raiders, and he has a story within itself. But aside from him playing football, he's working on an amazing documentary that has to do with his journey with a couple colleagues. But most importantly, the guy is a heart of gold. He's a father. He's gone through some adversity. Just like a football player goes by, he's really tackled on life in all aspects, because I get to talk to him on a one-on-one basis, and I know him as a personal friend of mine. He's like family. But without further ado, let's hear his story on how he went to UCLA, ran all the way to the Raiders, and then what happened that ended his career. And it's a great story because he has a story to tell to the youth, especially he just had a son, Kingston, beautiful, I think it's his twin. But without further ado, let me introduce to you my good friend, and Mr. Bruce Davis Jr.
Wow, great intro.
Yeah.
Man, ready to go.
Yeah, gotta be ready after that.
Platform now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here with us. We
of course,
appreciate it. I know your time is valuable, and this conversation I know is going to be gold. And all of our viewers that are going to watch are going to be inspired to be the best version of themselves as well.
Good. Thank you guys. I'm glad to be here. Really excited to sit down and have this conversation. And
absolutely. So glad you're here. So maybe we can kind of go back to the beginning of where you were born, where you were raised, and how you got to where you're at today.
So I was born in Los Angeles, right up the street, Cedars-Sinai. So my dad played for the Raiders, and at the time they were in Los Angeles. So I was born when they were in Los Angeles. LA Coliseum happened to win, a Super Bowl the year that I was born, and so I always say I'm the good luck for that Super Bowl that year. But so I was born in LA, but then he got traded to the Houston Oilers, what used to be the Houston Oilers, and so I grew up in a little town called League City. It's south of Houston, about 30-40 minutes. Went to high school out there, and then made my way back to LA for UCLA for college.
Very nice. How was it out there in Texas?
Texas is, I first of all, I love Texas, right? It's where I have some of the best memories of my life, right? It's where I grew up, made, some of my closest friends, right? And it's also where, I fell in love with the game of football. So for me, it's like, it will always carry this really special place for me. And football in Texas is a really big thing.
Huge thing.
So I remember exactly, that's it. So when I was, the 2000 census came out, I remember it was a big deal in Texas. It was something crazy like 3% of people on the census put football as their religion. Like in a and they're dead serious about it. So it's, to grow up and to play football in a city like Houston is, it was really incredible.
So did you play during like Pop Warner or in high school, or did?
I didn't play Pop Warner or Little League, and my dad actually didn't want me to play football, right? Not until I got to high school. He wanted me. The first thing I ever did was ran track, and then I played basketball, and then I was in Taekwondo as well. So he kind of was always like, look, like football is a really tough sport. And I don't think you need to be playing it as a tiny kid to be good at it. So he was like, you know, we got to go to martial arts and Taekwondo for the discipline aspect of things and, you know, the self-defense aspect of things. You know, that was always big for him. Like, hey, look, you're going to need to be able to handle yourself and take care of yourself. And then I played basketball because I just loved basketball. When I was growing up, the Houston Rockets were winning championship after championship. So I was there to see like Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Rudy Tomjanovich, all those guys. So, you know, I really loved basketball. And then I ran track, my mother ran track, you know, and it was one of those things that my dad said, hey, look, it's good for your speed, it's good for your feet, you know, it's good for your endurance. So, you know, I did all those things, and then 7th grade comes along, and I'm not even thinking about football, right? I'm thinking about basketball.
Your dad was kind of protecting you too.
He was, and really smart, because he had a lot of things that he dealt with physically, and he just recently passed away at the end of last year. Thank you. Yeah, you know, he had a bunch of health complications and all that, but he had been through so much.
They did a nice
physically.
homage. They did a nice homage for him.
They did. The Raiders really.
Yeah. They did the.
Yeah, at the game, they had a moment of silence for him at the game. They posted on all their social media sites. They sent out a really beautiful newsletter. They actually, when he passed away, they called myself. They called my mother. You know, they asked us, do we need anything? They offered to pay for his funeral.
Wow.
And that's the kind of organization. It's why I love them so much. But, you know, luckily my dad was
a
really.
Raider game with you, man.
Yeah.
Especially Las Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas. I mean,
Vegas.
it's a lot of fun.
That stadium is beautiful.
Oh man, it's the best. And I actually, before he passed away, I went to a game up there, and because my buddy works for the Cincinnati Bengals, so I went up to watch Raiders versus Bengals in Vegas.
Oh, nice.
And so for every player, they have a brick that has your name and your number and when you played. And you know, so as I'm walking in here, I'm like, oh, I wonder where my brick is at, right? And so I go and I find it, and I'm looking at this, and it's among all these other great players, right? And then I'm like, where's my dad's brick, right? So I go and I find it, and it was this really emotional moment because football has been a huge connection for us. Both went to UCLA, you know, both played in the NFL. We both have Super Bowls. We both played for the Raiders, right? So to see, and the Raiders was our like, that was our thing. Like I grew
You guys
up.
are both named Bruce Davis.
You can't mistake us, man. You know.
You look a lot like your dad.
Dude, I'm spitting image, like, and the same way that my son looks like me, like it's crazy. Like you can put baby pictures of all three of us, and it's like
The same person, different decades.
just reincarnated every time. Like it's crazy. But you know, I grew up hearing stories about, you know, Gene Upshaw and John Madden and Al Davis and Marcus Allen and all these guys, and I you know, I was around these guys. I was around this as a kid, and so to see my name there at the stadium with the rest of those guys and to see my dad, it was a really emotional moment. And I called him and I was, you know, choked up. I said, hey man, we're here together forever. And you know, it was a really super special moment, you know, for both of us. So, you know, the Raiders though, man, they reached out and they made sure we had what we needed. They made sure that, you know, if we needed anything in the process of, you know, completing his final wishes and all that they were there for us. I got, you know, phone calls, handwritten letters, emails from people all over the staff, his former teammates, and a lot of the people that, you know, worked in the building when he was in Oakland, they still work there now, right? So even when I was playing, like, I'm having conversations with people that, you know, got to see my dad grow up, and now they're watching me, you know, put on the same helmet and the same jersey and the same locker room and all that kind of stuff. So it, you know, the organization is just the best in my opinion. They were so helpful to us, and it was really, you know, they really came through for us in a major way.
So let's kind of go back a little bit. Well, the whole Clyde Drexler, and the Houston Rockets, when I used to play NBA Jam, other than the Lakers, of course, I used to always have the Houston Rockets because of Drexler. Oh man, that was a fun. I had to throw that in there real quick. But how was it? We're interviewing a lot of preachers, right? Well-known preachers, and then you hear like the preacher's kid, right, and the pressure and all that growing up. Going back to now being a son of a Raider football player, Super Bowl winner, right? How does that play out in your childhood growing up in high school and junior high?
Yeah, well, so like I said, my dad didn't want me to play football until high school. And then 7th grade comes along, and I'm obviously the biggest kid in the school. One of the 2 or 3 biggest kids in the school.
Did everybody know who your dad was and all that?
We lived in a little town, right? And you know, they're all about football in Texas. Everybody knew who my dad was. Everybody knows everybody in a small town. So everybody knew who he was, and so my buddies are going to try out for the football team, and we all ride bikes together to school every morning, like for years and years and years. So I'm going on my bike, and they're like, "Yo, where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going home. What are you talking about? Where are you going?" They're like, "We're going to try out for the football team. You should come." And I'm like, "No." My dad, like,
You're a top kid.
oh man, I'm like, "Yo, my dad, he doesn't want me to play." And they were like, "Look, just come. You'll make the team. Like, you got to be good. Your dad was good." And I never played. I watched football all the time with my dad. Like, I knew all the rules. I knew exactly what was going on, right?
Did you have a passion to play at all? Or
I wanted to, but at the time, I thought I was going to be a basketball player, right? So I was more like, I can do without this right now. I can wait a couple more years. No big deal, right? And they were like, "Dude, just come. Like, you got to be good. Biggest kid, like your dad played."
How good were you at basketball? Just a little side note.
I was pretty good.
Yeah.
I was pretty good. I was more of a defender.
Did you ever gone pro?
As tall as those guys are, I don't know. I was a little short.
I think you're the tallest guy I know.
Those guys are way up there. So I'd have had to be a point guard, and my handles weren't that great.
But then again, everybody I know is tall.
So yeah, I went out and I tried out for the team, and obviously I made it. It's the biggest kid there. Okay, and so I got out there, and we had our pads on, and we're
Did
hitting.
your dad know?
He didn't know.
So you defied his orders.
I certainly did.
So you didn't want you to play sports at all?
No, he didn't want me to play football. Not until I got to 9th grade. And so I make the team, and
Now is he traveling or is he at home?
no, he's at home. He is retired at this point, so he's home. And
You come home with your pads on and all that?
first, I'm thinking, okay, I made this team. We had our pads and everything on. I'm knocking kids around, and I fell in love. It was so physical. I was big and physical, and my dad was big. We played rough.
What was the team name?
We were the League City Bobcats. And so I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna go in here, I'm gonna tell him, like, what else can I do at this point? Like, he's either gonna be super mad and we're gonna go up to the school and then you're gonna tell him I'm not playing until, my freshman year, or he's gonna accept it. And so I was like, all right, whatever happens, right? And that was like the first big gamble of my life, right there.
Before that time, did you guys even throw?
Oh yeah, we would
that?
throw the ball. We would go out and we'd run around in the backyard. We lived in Texas, dirt cheap out there to live, so we had a giant yard. You know what I mean? And we would just go out in the back and we'd throw the ball around. We'd mess around. We'd run around. We'd play tag. And he was kind of in this roundabout way teaching me about sports.
So in Texas, you have this big yard. Now, when your dad was throwing you a pass, you were going out for a pass, were you kind of thinking like, okay, Dad, did I do good? Did I not do good? Were you?
No, you know what? With him, he was just like, man, let's just run around, have fun. So it was just like, all right, let's do it. And, we gravitated to it really easily. And I remember one day we were out there. My dad's a big man. He's offensive tackle. At one point, he had the biggest Super Bowl ring ever made, right? Gigantic man. The ring is so big and I inherited one of them. My brother has the other one. The ring is so big that I can fit 2 of my fingers in it. Wow. And I've got giant hands, right? So he is one of the original 300+ pound offensive linemen. Back in that day, they didn't, they liked guys around 260, 270. That was a big guy back then. But then he came in 315, 320 out the gate, like giant man. Right, so one day I'm like, I'm faster than you. And he said, don't let these bad knees fool you. I can still move if I have to. And I'm like, no, I'm faster than you are.
And how much was he weighing then?
He's probably
retired
about
already now?
350 then, maybe a little more, retired.
Isn't that like a typical son, always pushing your dad, right? You want to see how far you can.
Yeah, you always got to poke the line a little bit, right? And
Where you're at, right?
so I'm like, so he's like, all right, and I'm looking at my mom like, I got this, and my mom was kind of like, oh no, you know what I mean? Because I'm still young, so I don't really remember seeing him play a lot. So I can't really gauge his athleticism. He's just dad. Of course I went to football games when he was, with the Oilers. I was a little bit older and could enjoy the game. And I remember like going and being on his shoulders after a game or going in the locker room, going to practice with him. But like, actually remembering seeing him specifically, like how athletic he was, I never remembered. So I'm like, all right, let's do this. So my mom's like, oh no. So my sister comes out, my brother comes out, and we're racing from the end of the house to, there was this giant plant in like the corner of the yard. So I would guess it's probably about 50 yards, okay? Maybe 40 yards. And we take off, and I'm like, we're close by, stride for stride to start off, probably the first 10, 15 yards.
You're going at it?
I'm like, oh, I got this. And then he just hits another gear and takes off, finishes, and then turns around, looks at me, and is waiting for me to, and I'm like, man, this is, so, yeah, I'm like, man, this is dumb, right? So, that's the kind of stuff that we did. Like it was more like competing and running around. I'm sure now that I have a son, I know he's probably just trying to tire us out, right? So
It's interesting. You said he's just dad. From a dad's perspective, that had to have been intentional.
yeah, I think so. He was intentional with a lot of the stuff that he did, and so, from as early as I can remember, I mean, even though he was a football player, he was still like dad, like, you know what I mean? It was like, all right, if you need something, dad's right there, we just knew, yeah, and it wasn't like, and he was very humble as well, like, he didn't ever like, I'm a football player, no, he treated everybody the same way, was polite to everybody, very generous, just a normal, carried himself, like a normal dude, so.
I'm still waiting to see what happened when you got home.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so
get home.
I've made the decision, like, all right, I just got to tell him, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Oh, you're already part of the team. That's it.
I made the team already, so it's like,
Got to accept
I'm a
it.
starter already.
Yeah.
They're like, you're.
Come to my first game.
Yeah. So I walk in. I never forget this. I walk. I ride my bike. I got my shoulder pads and stuff on still. I walk in the door. He's sitting on the couch right there in the living room. I open the door. We have this second where we look at each other, and I can see him being like, "I told you not to do this."
He already knew, almost.
Yeah, but he was like, he could see the look on my face, and he was like, all right. So that was just a split second, and then he was like, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna commit 100%. We don't do anything halfway, right? This is hard, right? And this is from early on, and this was with anything.
Did you understand at that moment when he told you that?
What that really
Yes.
meant?
What it meant?
I knew what it meant because I had been around with him and his buddies, and I had seen his Super Bowl rings, right? I knew what a champion was, right? I knew what athletics were and what athletic accomplishments were. So even though initially it wasn't football for me, I still was like, I want to be great at what I'm doing. And it was just the normal standard, right? That's just what it was. Like, there was no, it was like, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it all the way. So, he was just like, we're going to do this. And if you're going to do it, you're going to commit to it. And, he was like, there's going to be sacrifices. You're going to miss things. And, but if you love this, that's what it is. And I said, I looked at him and I'm like, all right, whatever it is, let's do it.
Basketball, now football. What were some of the things at an early age from your coaches, the camaraderie? What were some principles that you learned being a part of a team that now you can say, looking back, that really helped me become who I am today?
Just accountability is a giant thing for me, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be related to sports. It could be for school, it could be for family, it could be for work obligations, it could be with your friends, your family, whatever, right? Accountability.
Because you got to be at practice.
You can't let your team down. Like when I was doing Taekwondo, oddly enough, there was a day where a bunch of my friends from school were going to the mall, right? But I had Taekwondo lessons. And I was like, oh, I'm just not gonna go to this one. I wanna go to the mall and hang with my friends. And he looked at me, he was like, no. And I remember being pissed. Like I was mad. Like, why won't you let me be a kid? And you know, but now that I look back on it, it was like, that's the commitment that he was talking about. And I ended up going to Taekwondo and, you know, I was pissed, but I ended up having one of the best sessions I had. And that's when I kind of learned like, okay, like I can use this physical activity to kind of get rid of, you know, whether it's annoyance or anger or just get rid of some energy or to work through some things. Like I learned that right then and there, right? Like
It's a good outlet.
yeah, and so it just, what he told me that day when, you know, when I walked in with my pads on, it just kind of carried over to every other aspect of my life. And so, you know, he's like, all right, we're gonna do this and you gotta commit and you know, your team comes first, it's not about you. And then 10 minutes later, we were in the backyard and, you know, we were working on stance and starts and posture and footwork and the whole nine. And it just took off from there.
So accountability, what's something else that some principles you learned there being in Taekwondo, basketball, football?
It's weird, with Taekwondo, there was a list of principles that we had. And, you know, accountability was at the top and commitment was at the top. But then right there at the top with those was never give up, right? Don't give up, just don't. Like shouldn't be in your DNA, shouldn't be in your vocabulary. Never, ever give up. And I remember having these things written down on a whiteboard in our house, right?
Who wrote those down?
We got the information from the Taekwondo instructor, right? And it was just his principles, right? And so it was like, all right, we're gonna abide by these, right? Never give up, be accountable for yourself and your actions, you know.
Whose idea was it to write that? Because I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, that's key.
My dad was sitting there, he went to every lesson with me, right? So he is able to soak these things up as an adult in a different way than I am. So I'm hearing them and I'm like, yeah, okay, like that makes sense.
You had a whiteboard?
Mm-hmm. It was just a little whiteboard in our house. It sat in the kitchen and it was like,
You saw it.
it was every day. It was right there where we ate breakfast at every day. And it's just like, you know, you see something enough times, it just becomes a part of you. You tell yourself something enough times and it just becomes a part of you, right? It's a very subtle thing. Yeah. And it's one of those things that my dad, again, he was very intentional with a lot of the stuff that he did, right? Even though, you know, what it's like being a young man, you question everything, or being a little boy, you question everything. Why this? Why that? Why would you?
Of course.
You know, but he was very intentional with everything, right? So seeing that every day, it was like, okay, these are the principles we live by. Plus, you know, the other ones that we had in our house just from my parents, like, you know, you treat people with respect, you treat people how you want to be treated. You know, you say hello, you make eye contact with somebody, you say hello, you acknowledge people, right? You're not gonna mess around in school. And that was once we all became good at sports, it was like, all right, this is great, but if you don't make grades, I'm gonna sit you down. You're not gonna play. I don't care how mad you get, you won't play, right? And I was thinking like, yeah, right. I got a bad grade on a test one time, and there was like a giant debate. I almost didn't play in one of the games, one of my football games in 7th, 8th grade. And what it came down to is me kind of manipulating those things on the whiteboard. It was like, I've got to be accountable for my team. I know I messed up in school, but like, what am I supposed to be perfect? I can't let my team down. And so he was kind of like, okay, you got me, right? So I ended up playing, but it was like, if we weren't making grades, there was nothing, right? There was no, you you're going to sit down here and study, right? You're not going to watch TV. You're not going to play video games. You're not going to be outside, playing with your friends if your grades are bad. So, again, from an early age, that was motivation to, all right, school and football can take me where I want to go later on. So let me not mess around with either of these.
Now, before we move forward to bringing you back here to LA, one thing, there in high school, junior high, one, were you a good kid? Were you a troublemaker? And two, did sports help you to go one way or the other, to keep you from one side or the other?
I was a good kid, and I wasn't really going to be doing too many crazy things. I mean, my dad was like 6'7", 6'8", 350 pounds. Like, I had a healthy fear of my father. Like, yeah, I've got to answer to him if I'm messing around, and that was
respect for him.
Oh man, and it was like he used to say all the time, when you step out of this house, if you're doing good, you're a reflection of us as a family and as a unit. But equally, if you're out there being an idiot, doing bad, getting into trouble, you're also a reflection of us and me. So, don't make me look bad by you being out here acting a fool, right? So it was like, that was one of those things. It was like, all right, I've got to conduct myself accordingly. And when I started playing football that day, my dad and I kind of made that pact. I made the decision right then and there, I'm going to go to the NFL. I don't know how it's going to get done. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. I'm going.
Did you tell your dad that?
I told him that too.
That day?
That day. I said, hey, look, that's my, because we frequently talked about goals. Like, that's another thing that pops up throughout my career and my life. Like, it was like, look, you can't get something that you can't envision yourself getting, right? So what do you want?
At what age was your dad already talking about these goals? And this is important. A lot of the viewers have kids. I have 3 kids myself.
Young, very young. And because from an early age, obviously, my dad playing football, like, our life was different than most people's, right? And it was like, we knew we had advantages financially and, with my parents' status and them both being college graduates, like, we knew, like, we had a lot, right? So, exactly. And so from an early age, it was like, look, you've got to put the work in. Like, you've got to, so that was just.
No excuses, right?
No excuses for anything. Like, from the time I was a kid, for as long as I can remember, it's been those principles. Like, they started talking about goals and accountability and hard work from, it started with doing our chores.
So now moving forward, you finished high school. You're still in Texas, right? What happens after high school? So
high school, my freshman year, I broke my thumb, really badly. Didn't play for the rest of the year. That was like the first game. And then my next year, I start off on junior varsity, and then after 2 games, they're like, no, you're playing with the big kids, right? So I go and, my first game on varsity, I played well, got a couple sacks, and it was like, okay.
What position?
Defensive end. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. And then, just steadily picked up. And then, I was leading my area and my district in sacks and tackles for a loss and for 2 years straight. And then my senior year, I was my area's MVP and I was a 4-star recruit. And, I was getting offers from everywhere.
Do you think things came physically natural to you? Or did you really have to step out of your element and put in the work?
I think a lot of things were natural. I mean, physically, I was, because my dad was an NFL player, my mom is also, 5'10", 5'11", was an athlete herself.
That was your norm.
I had physical advantages.
And also it was your norm.
But that was just it for me.
Was just so high.
Yeah, it wasn't like.
You were born into it.
I was.
Right.
And one thing, again, before we move on, that my parents, don't play down. You have a gift. Use your gift. Right? You don't have to, don't ever.
That's powerful.
Lower your standards for everybody else.
Don't play down to what everybody else's physical capability is. And my dad used to say, I'm a big man. Don't ever shrink that.
Own it.
You're big. be that, own that. Your personality is big, your body is big, your energy is big. Own that, right? So it was like never play down to anybody else, right? So I knew I had advantages, but I also, given that, another one of the principles was like, just because you're physically talented doesn't mean you don't have to work. Like, because my dad used to say, there's a million football players that never made it, that are better than me, that are better than you'll ever be, that are better than anybody that's ever played, but they didn't put the effort in. They didn't put the work in. They thought it was all about natural talent, and now they're sitting at home. So I was gonna do both, right? I was gonna take this and this, put it together, and was gonna make something happen. And so, you know, I ended up getting scholarship offers from literally everywhere, right? And the recruiting process was just crazy. Like,
Was it like you see in the movies where you're playing and they're in the stands watching?
oh man, I used to have University of Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, UCLA, USC, Arkansas, everybody in the SEC, everybody, always. Harvard, Columbia, I had good grades too, so everywhere. And they used to be all at the games, and
How did that make you feel?
Good.
Yeah.
And my football team was really good though, right? We had 4 or 5 guys get Division I scholarships my senior year. So we had a really good, so they weren't there just watching me, right? But you know, but I knew because, you know, like LSU, they would.
How many of those went pro, from what you recall?
Just me.
Just you.
Just me.
Wow.
Just me. Yeah.
That says a lot about your talent right there.
Just got to keep
And your
going, man.
commitment.
And it's, you know, things pop up. Another one was in the league for a little bit, maybe a year. But that's it. But yeah, like.
So those who don't know, where did you choose to go?
Went to UCLA.
UCLA. Why UCLA? Great school.
So both my parents went to UCLA. My mom ran track at UCLA before accepting an academic scholarship, and she kind of left sports. And my mom's a brilliant human being, probably the smartest person I know. My dad played football there. My uncle played football. My uncle and my dad were only a year apart, but they both played at UCLA. My best friend and his dad both went to UCLA, right? And his dad and my dad were roommates. Him and I were roommates at UCLA. So it was just, the family connection, I think, was overwhelming. And then I took a recruiting trip out there. So I'd been on a couple trips. I think I did an unofficial visit to University of Texas.
So you weren't like high school, like I'm going to UCLA.
No.
You wanted
no, I was committed my sophomore year in high school. I was committed to Texas. I had been for every spring game, every little event they would have for the recruits. I was there. So I was there all the time. I met like Earl Campbell and all these guys. Like I was there all the time.
So you're already leaning towards.
I was leaning towards Texas, and it was home, and I was like, oh, this would be cool. Like people can come. And then, I was committed to Arkansas after that, and I really liked Arkansas. I would have played my first year, but I took that trip to Arkansas. I really loved the coach at the time, but I flew out to Arkansas, and I was like, this don't feel right to me.
Everything's flat.
This ain't it for me. I was like, really liked the team, really liked the guys, but it was just like, And then I took a trip to Colorado, which was beautiful. It was snowing, but it was gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful college campuses I've ever
who's paying
seen.
for all of this?
They are.
Wow, so
Yeah, they pay for
even
this.
that in itself was.
Yeah, I was flying all over the country. Yeah,
Feeling great.
Look, I took a private plane to Arkansas. The SEC got a different kind of money, right? So I took a private plane from Houston to Arkansas. Like it was just me and the 2 pilots on the plane, and that was it. Wow. That's it, just us. Oh, and the stewardess.
What's going through your mind at that moment?
I'm looking like, yo, I could get used to this. I'm like,
You're about 17, 18?
I was 17. I'm like, yo, I like this, right?
It was working.
But Arkansas wasn't it. I got to Colorado. It was beautiful. They had a really good football team. I really, really loved the school. And I was like, I could see myself here. But it was snowing. There was like 2-3 feet of snow on the ground. And I was like, it's cold, but yeah, I can do it, I think. It wasn't a deal breaker. From there, I go home for like a day, and then I go straight to UCLA. for the next big recruiting weekend, and they had like 15 guys.
Now, was
out
your
there.
dad leaning for UCLA?
He was like, "Go where you want to."
I'm sure in his heart maybe he wanted him to go there. But he
No,
didn't
you
want to
know
make
what?
it
You know what's
or
really
not.
cool about my parents? They were like, "Look, man, this ain't about us. We're gonna support you no matter what." And I felt that from the beginning. So I was like, okay. But so I go to Colorado. It's beautiful, but it's snowing, and then I go home for a couple days, and I shoot right out to LA.
Have you been to LA since you were?
I'd been to Disneyland and Universal Studios, but nothing like. And I had some family out here, but I was young, so I hadn't really experienced LA as a young man. So
Private plane to LA?
no, that's too expensive.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So now you're in the city of the palm trees.
So I get, we're flying in. I'm looking. I'm like, oh, this is nice. I could, we're flying in over the water.
What year was this?
This would have been 2002. 2002.
Okay.
And so I fly in. It's palm trees. It's beautiful. I hop off the plane. 72 degrees. They got the driver. Mr. Bruce Davis, UCLA. We're here to pick you up.
I can picture all of that.
Oh,
Maybe
It's like a movie right there.
Well, maybe because I just watched Winning Time, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm picturing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
And he
It's
just
like
falls
that.
in love
It's
with
dude.
UCLA?
And so we go from the airport to Gladstone's in Malibu, right there on the water. And look, I'm from town of Texas.
You just came from snow. Now you're over here at the beach.
I went from 2 feet of snow to Texas to LA. So now I'm at the beach. We're in Malibu, and I'm like, there's a bunch of other recruits though. So it's like I meet the coaching staff and all the recruits. Everybody's there, and I'm like, yo, this is nice. So we're eating lobster and shrimp and all kinds of just beautiful. I mean, I'm like, okay.
The scenery was nice too.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's-
I didn't want to bring that up,
Yeah,
but
there's
now that we're
sunglasses
having a conversation.
oh man.
Yeah.
It was like,
Nice
man,
palm trees.
Palm trees, California girls, man. Oh, come on.
Did you hear like music when you were coming in the plane, like California?
California love.
Yeah.
It was like, what? And then so we go back and, we get settled in for the night. And the next day is when, early in the morning, they take you around and they show you around the school. And they had some of the Laker girls that went to UCLA.
Of course they did.
Take us on a little trip around, and they showed us where everything was. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like they really knew how to recruit, right? Like, so I'm like, oh, this is cool, right? So, and my godbrother actually is my host. His parents went to UCLA as well, same time. His dad ran track, great hurdler, fantastic. Actually an Olympic hurdler, but it was the year that they opted out of going. I think was it in Germany or something? I don't know. There was something going on, but they opted out. And he's my host, so we go out that night and we're partying and
Enjoying life.
Yeah, I can't get into too many details, but it was a great night.
Yeah, it was a
Let's
good
just put it that way. It was a fantastic night, right?
You weren't even thinking about Colorado or.
Oh,
any
that's
other
all gone.
state,
Look,
right?
look.
California love.
It was.
He was thinking about scoring some touchdowns. for
Yeah,
UCLA.
yeah, exactly. So okay, and so we have a good time, and I don't really drink much, so I think I probably had a couple beers and was drunk, right? Done. I'm a square. I don't do anything. So the next day, they wake you up really early and they take you out to the Rose Bowl, right over here, right where we're at right now. And we do the tour of the locker room. They have our jerseys in the locker with our numbers on there and your name. It says Davis, and I'm like.
Now, did they do that in other colleges?
Yeah, they did. Everybody kind of had some things that were similar, some that were different. But that was one of the things. Like they're going to put a jersey in the locker. And,
Personal touch.
yeah, personal touches.
Visualization, like you're already here.
Yeah, but so when I saw the UCLA one, it was different because I had seen pictures of my dad at UCLA in the blue jersey with the gold numbers and the gold pants and the gold helmet. Like, so I'm looking at that and it's looking at me like. So I'm like, right. And I remember thinking right there, like, this is the same place that my dad and my uncle and, all these guys that I idolized did their thing and became great. And I'm like, I'm like, okay. And then we get up, they take us up through the stadium, and we come out kind of like in the middle of the stadium. So up there high enough to see the entire field. They got the fight song playing. And then
Are you by yourself or other?
no, there's other
recruits
recruits.
as well?
Yeah, there's other recruits, but they have us going out one at a time, and I'm in the front of the line because my last name starts with a D. So just in alphabetical order, I was at the top.
Do they announce it like if you're coming out for a game?
Oh man, they were like, and now starting at defensive end from Houston, Texas, Bruce Davis, and then it's like they have this crowd noise, and they've got you can see the fields all painted, and man, like right then and there, I knew I was looking at my future. Like I just knew it. It was game over, and I just done, sold. That was it. Like, and as soon as I left there, I called my dad. I picked up my phone, and I called him. I said, "Hey," I said, "this is where I'm going to school."
Did you play hard to get when you already knew, but with your coaches or any of the recruits?
Oh
in there,
yeah, I played the
Play
game
right?
with everybody else,
course,
right?
yeah.
But with my family, I was like, no, I'm going. Then I get back home, and I'm like, yo, this is it.
I can just imagine how proud your dad was.
Oh man,
Yeah.
he was like beaming, right? Beaming. My mom too was like, yeah, this is, and she was like, you earned this, like.
Because statistically, the fact that both parents, UCLA, and then fast forward to the Raiders.
Right.
I can't think of any athlete out there that's done that.
I don't know.
And then with the same exact name.
I don't think so.
I mean, that's
I don't
just.
think so. Like, for perspective, in all the years that the NFL has been around, there's only 8 or 9 now. 9 because Chris Long won a Super Bowl a few years ago. But there's 9 fathers and sons that have won Super Bowls. 9 out of the however many players have ever played the game of football and made it to the NFL. Only 9. So it's like, it's really crazy when you look at it from that perspective. Like that's a drop of water in the ocean. You know what I mean? That's the likelihood. So.
So how did you go from now you chose your school, now you're here in Cali. What was that experience and how did it lead to your NFL career?
So it was my first year. I redshirted and I was pissed. I was really upset about that because when I started college too, I should say this, I was 17 years old. I was born in September, so I was one of the youngest ones in my class always. So I was 17 when I showed up for college, 2003. And I would have been turning 18 that first year. So but we have basically our entire defense went to the NFL, right? So we get there and I play really well, even when I'm playing with these older guys, I'm the youngest person there by far, not even close, right? And when I get my opportunities, I take advantage. I play really well. Like I played really well.
Was there a big adjustment going from high school, college, and then now in the big leagues?
Size and speed.
Size and speed.
Right, when you're in high school, you may be the best player on your team or the best few players on your team. And like I said, we had a great team in high school. But then you get to college and everybody's that player. Everybody's that guy, right? And there's a bunch of people that play the same position that you do, right? And some of them are bigger and better and older than you are. I'm sitting here competing with a guy that's about to be 22 years old, 21 years old. Like
Big distinction.
That's huge. And they're just physically, the difference in maturity from a 17-year-old to a 22-year-old, that's a giant gap.
Do you see a different mindset or a hunger from the person you're looking at on the other side, from high school, college to now in the NFL?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of every stage, I was looking at, like in high school, I was looking at kids I was bigger than and I knew I was better than, and so I was like, I'm better than you are. And not in a disrespectful way, but like, I'm here to win. I'm here to dominate. This is about competition, and you're not gonna beat me. That's how I looked at people in high school. I mean, it took a couple of years for me to get there, but once I was there, it was like, all right, I knew I was the best. I told myself, this is something that I always did too. I always told myself, you're the best. You're great. Because it's like whatever you tell yourself is what you're gonna believe. Whatever you hear, just like that whiteboard that had all that stuff on there, accountability, discipline, consistency, never give up, right? It's what you feed yourself, like what you eat is what you're gonna become, right? So I was always telling myself, you're the best, you're great, you're dominant, you're gonna kill this kid.
That is so.
That right there is huge. My son, you ask him, what's your affirmation right before he goes to jiu-jitsu? I'm fast, I'm strong, and I'm the best. And you ask him, and instantly, it's engraved in him now. And going back to what you're saying, it just...
That's where it starts. It starts when you're young. I think, now having a son now, it's like a little kid, especially a little boy, right? When you're a father of a boy, they have this realization that you guys are the same very early on. I think Kingston had his at about 7 or 8 months. He saw me going to the bathroom. He was like, oh, we have the same equipment? Okay, me and you, I get it, right? So with a boy, it's like, they want to be their dad, right? That's their guide. That's who, they identify with their dad early. So it's like whatever you teach them from an early age is what they're going to go with. Like you're saying with Easton, I'm fast, I'm strong, I'm the best. He believes that.
Yeah, rather working towards it, you're working from it.
Yeah.
You're just it.
And it's like, look, if nobody ever told you couldn't do anything, what would you try to do?
Everything.
Any and everything.
That's right.
A little kid, they soak that up. Like right now, my son, he knows the difference between mommy and daddy, right? And I'm fortunate, I'm retired, I get to be with my son a lot, right? My wife works, she does makeup. So there's days where she'll be gone, like if the Oscars or the Emmys or the, some award shows in town, she'll be gone 8 hours a day, right? Working, grinding, and she loves what she does. But, I say I'm the luckiest man in the world because I'm at home with my son. I get to influence him every single day. I'm the first thing he sees when he wakes up every morning.
That is powerful.
Daddy's gonna come in there. I'm gonna get you at that crib. I'm gonna change your diaper. I'm gonna get you a bottle, and mommy's gonna wake up, and we're gonna get your food, and we're gonna get our day started, right? So but he knows the difference between us, and I think all kids, especially boys, need those differences. Like he knows mommy's got a softer touch, he knows mommy's gonna coddle him a little bit, but he knows with dad, like if you fall down, get up. You can tell him get up, and he'll hop up like the ground is on fire.
Yeah, same thing. If mommy says, "Are you okay?" and
he's gonna start crying. He wasn't crying before, like not at all. But like now, it's like he'll fall down, and sometimes he'll fall and hit his head, or he'll fall and he'll hurt himself a little bit, and it's like, oh, I know that's painful. So let daddy come here, let daddy pick you up. Let me check you out. Yeah. Let me, you're okay. I'm here. I got you. We're good. Yeah. You coddle him a little bit, and then it's like, all right, get up though. But when it's not, and sometimes he falls, and I'm sure it hurts, and there's a split second where he's like about to cry, but then he remembers to get up. He'll roll over, get up, pick himself up, and then he'll laugh. And that'll be with him forever. Get up, get up, get up, get up. You're okay. Get up, keep moving, right?
My son is here. He's right behind the cameras. When he was little, he would fall, and then he would look at mom, and then mom would be like, "Are you okay, Mia?" I'm like, "Hey, look at dad. Get up."
I have to do that too. And
it's out of that.
And it's an adjustment for all of us, of course. And then sometimes it's like, all right, go to mommy. Like, all right, you got it, because you need that. They need that soft touch, and I think that benefits them in the long term as well. And
now sometimes it backfires. So when I'm sick, oh my gosh, he'll come in and I'm like, I'll text him, can you bring me some soup? He's like, are you serious, bro? Get up. Get up. I'm hurting. It's bad.
Yeah, no, this is different. This is different.
Oh my gosh, I need another spoon. Are you serious? I'm like, yeah. I'm hurt,
But yeah, those lessons, right? Like you're saying with Easton, it's the mind is, and I tell kids all the time, I do these camps with other, former NFL players all the time. It's a series of camps called Take Back the Neighborhood, right? And I tell kids all the time, because every coach at the end of it, you get up, you introduce yourself and kind of talk to them for a couple of minutes. And I always say, hey, your mind is the most powerful weapon that you have. It's the best tool that you have, right? Use it, right? So if you fall down, get up. If you believe you're great, you'll be great. Tell yourself you're the best, right? So in high school, I was doing that. I'm the best. Then I get to college and I'm like, I'm telling myself that, but I'm looking at a dude who's going to get drafted in the NFL, who's going to play a long time in the league.
It's probably messing with your psyche.
It is a little bit, and it's like this though. It's a good readjustment. Because just because you mastered one level, now you can take a step up. Now you're dealing with masters of this level who are ready to take the next step and then the next step and whatever that looks like, right? So I still told myself, I'm like, yo, you're great, but you have to work. You got a lot of ground to cover, right? Your time is coming. It may not be right this second, but that doesn't diminish who you are.
Because you're playing out with people who are also telling themselves they are great.
I'm playing with college football All-Americans. I'm playing with some of the most physically gifted human beings I've ever seen in my life, right? And I'm like, but there was never a time where I was like, I don't deserve to be here, or I shouldn't be, or I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, right. I knew I was supposed to be exactly where I was, but you gotta switch up the game plan a little bit. So, I redshirted that year, which means you don't play, but but it doesn't count against your 4 years of eligibility. And it ended up being the best thing because as I look back now, I was 17, I was young, I was immature, I was physically immature, mentally, I wasn't ready for what it was. And so I had to go through that year of sitting and watching other people perform and do what I love. And it hurt me in this way that, was almost indescribable because I was like, I had this burning passion to be out there, but I couldn't be. And it's not my own choice. And I'm within the structure of a college and a team, so I have to go along with this. This is what I signed up for, right? So.
Did that, looking back now, was that one of the better things that have happened?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh man, one of the best. Because it gave me time to mature. It gave me time to, get it together with school and figure that out. Because now you don't have your mom and dad saying, all right, you got to get up and go to school. And no, you don't have to go to class if you don't want to in college. You're going to have a test no matter what. You better be prepared for that test. You can get your notes online, or you can read the books, or, have somebody else take notes and, get your whatever. You can go to a tutor.
That's like a big thing, trust the process, right?
Right, like there's nobody there to tell you what to do. So you kind of gotta, and this is my first time away from home like it is for a lot of people. And so I'm like, this is a new world. So I had to adjust to a lot of different things, right? But then it's like that next year, I come in and, there's still a couple guys ahead of me, right? So I'm playing a handful of plays a game, but when I come in the game, I'm making big plays, right? So I'm like, okay, I got this. It's a matter of time, and there's things that are out of my control, but you got this.
And that first year, you're still practicing with everybody.
You're doing everything except playing. So you're putting in just as much work. You're getting beat up because you're on the scout team, you're on the show team, you're getting beat up, but there's no payoff at the end because you don't get to play in the game. A little bit, but nothing too crazy. You know what I mean? Like it was more like establishing dominance. Like this is the pecking order, right? This is what it is, which I kind of, I never because my dad played, I knew the game. I knew what it was. It was like, all right, man, these older guys, it is what it is. You're gonna have to carry somebody's shoulder pads or get somebody some food. It is what it is. It's part of the process, right? So to me, it wasn't like a big deal. But I also kind of made sure, if I had to, get fired up and start a fight in practice, then I would do that. You know what I mean? Or I was the guy that in practice I was gonna go hard. Like that was my game. That was it. Wednesday practice when everybody's got full pads on, and that's my game. And that's how I looked at it. That's it. That's all I've got. So I'm gonna go out here, and my goal is to not only make myself better, but to show up on their tape every day and just be annoying them or making play or being in the backfield, whatever it was. You're gonna see me on that tape.
That was your game.
That was it.
That is so good right there.
So it's like you have to. When you're in pursuit of your greater goal, you still have to manage where you are, right? Just because you're not meeting that goal or that expectation right then and there doesn't mean that you're not on your way to that.
Repeat that again?
You have to manage where you are, right?
On your pursuit of your goal.
Yeah, you want to be here, right? But right now you're here. Well, what are you going to do? Just cry about it until you get up here? No, you're never going to get there that way. So you have to manage each level of where you're at. Right, you've got to be prepared for whatever is going to come your way, wherever you are. I couldn't play in the game on Saturdays. I wasn't going to be on TV. I was going to, hey, why aren't you playing? Or what happened? Or
all that.
Oh God, it was so annoying. So I took that frustration out on our offense, right? And I gained respect by that. You're going to see me on this tape. I'm gonna make plays. I'm gonna pick a ball off. I'm gonna get to your quarterback. I'm gonna tackle your running back.
And it made you better, and it also made them better, right? Because they knew that you were bringing it.
Because my thing was this, like, I looked at it like this. I want this to be easy for you on Saturday when you got to play. Because even though I was young, I was like, you're not going to see another guy like me.
Imagine a team if everybody had that mindset that this is my game.
Yeah, and it's hard because you're dealing with 17 and 18-year-old, young men, who have never, not been the best at what they do. So it's hard, and everybody goes through it differently. But again, like the value of having been raised the way that I was and having my parents who had done some fantastic things, it was like, okay, you're in control of your mind. You may not be in control of the circumstance, the situation, the structure, but you're in control of your mind and how you deal with these things. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have days where I cried my eyes out or that I thought I hated football, right? I was like, man, how could this, just.
Why are they doing this?
Why is it like this? Like I did everything I could. It wasn't enough. Or, I called my dad sometimes crying and he'd be like, this is what it is. He'd be like, I understand you and I know you're hurting, but
you
it's
were probably
process.
going through some changes, right?
Oh, man.
Mentally,
school,
man.
All that. Oh, and it's a very, even if you don't play football, 17, 18, 19, that's a very transformative time in a young man's life.
Absolutely.
Like you're experiencing the world now.
Without mommy and daddy.
Exactly. And now you're also like having to understand that everything's not clear cut, right? So, you're gonna have to adjust on the fly. So I was really hurt. But I worked through it and I was like, every time I step on this practice field, I'm gonna dominate this. I'm gonna dominate. And that's what I did. And there was a handful of guys that had the same mentality and no surprise, they were all great players and ended up in the NFL or were dominant players in college football or other All-Americans. Like, your mind is, like I tell the kids now, is a powerful tool. So it's just how you direct that.
I'm getting so many nuggets just from this conversation, but one main thing that just stuck out of everything is like that is my game. Imagine that same mindset as a person that doesn't play for the NFL or sports into the gym with that mindset, this is my game.
This is it.
Or going with your kids, like this is my game as a parent. Mm-hmm. Or as a husband on a date night, this is my game.
That's
right?
it.
Or in business or any aspect, this is my game, right?
Yeah, and again, it's about how you look at something.
This is
right?
our game right here.
This is it. This is the game. But you know what? Now, today, this right here we're doing, this is my game today. Yeah. My wife's out of town. My son's out of town. They get back tonight. Like, I've been, this is my game right now. I've been, thinking about this for the longest, right? And now we're here and we're doing this.
Leave it all on the field.
So, that's powerful.
That's heavy, man.
It's being present and being all in, like, this is it. Like, what if there's no tomorrow? This is your game. Right. That's what lands to me when I'm hearing that. I
think a lot of people don't think like that. And I think, this is something else my dad told me. Some people fear greatness or fear work because it's like if you expose yourself or you put yourself out there, there's always that chance that, you might fail.
Yeah, the vulnerability.
But yeah, and to me, failure was not something I ever, obviously you don't like to lose, you don't like to fail, but it's something that shouldn't be shied away from, right? It's in those moments when you fail or when you fall short or you don't meet a goal that you set for something short term that you find out who you are, right? It's easy to be,
when you're on top,
when you're on top, when everything's going well, when, when all the work is done. No, but it's like, look, like, and a lot of people just kind of like, or a path of least resistance kind of a thing. That's not how the world works. It's not. Like there's gonna be things that happen no matter what, and you're gonna have to deal with them.
And that's where you find who you really are, right?
That's what you find out, and that's in those moments and various aspects of my life, and it even carries over to now, is where I found out who I was as a human being. And so, that this is my game, this practice where this is all I've got, that carried me into the next year. So I come in, I play spot duty, 15 plays a game, but I'm making big plays. The following year, same thing. I'm like, okay, more big plays, but I wasn't playing as much. And so there came a point where so the first game of the year, first or second game of the year, we're playing San Diego State in San Diego. And I had a sack, 8 tackles, I think a forced fumble, and a pass breakup. Balling, crazy. It's my best game of my career so far. The next week, I don't play. I play a handful of, I'm looking like, nah. Now I'm like, okay, I understand my talent level is not being respected in this place where I've put in all this work, right? And so I called my parents. I said, hey, maybe this place isn't it for me, because I know what I'm capable of. And if you turn on the TV, you can see it, right? And they were like, look, you got to make that decision for yourself. So, I went in there with the coaches. My dad was on the phone, my mom was on the phone, and I'm sitting there and I'm breaking it down to them. I'm like, look, I'm going nuts out here on the field, and it's like, you guys got me playing, 8, 10 plays a game? I said, how does that work? How am I playing 10, 12, 15 plays, and I'm making the biggest impact on the team right now? So I almost left UCLA, but then I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? I sat there, and this was one of those times where my parents kind of like backed up a little bit. Everybody kind of was like, hey, this is your life, right? They're like, we're here if you need us, but ultimately this decision is yours. So I remember like, all right, I took a couple days, and I was like, is this really it for me? Like, is this where I want to be? Because I could have gone to Arkansas and I'd have started my freshman year. Now we're talking about being in my redshirt sophomore year, and I'm having a battle to play.
Now, did you have a mindset that you wanted to go to the NFL at this moment?
From the jump.
So are you thinking, I need more?
It wasn't about going to the NFL at that time, because I still had a lot of time left in college football. So, the NFL was always in the back of my head, but it wasn't the driving force. It was being great where I was at, or making my own legacy. Was the driving force. I was just frustrated, and I think that happens. And I sat there and I talked to the coaches, and my family was there, and I took my couple days, and I ultimately decided to stay at UCLA, which ended up being the best decision I ever made, right? And I was like, you know what? My dad was like, look, you're here now. You've made the choice. What are you gonna do? Is there more that you can do? Are you doing enough? Where do you feel like you're at?
Ball in your
court. Is there more?
Ball in your court.
Do you have more to give this? Yeah. Right? And he wasn't like, you have more to give me. He was like, well, you have more to give yourself. You have more to give the game. You have more to give your teammates. Because that's what it is, right? And I'm like, there's another level. I realized right then and there's another level that I have to tap into here to separate myself or be. It's one thing to say I want to be great. It's another thing to get up every single day.
Take action.
And take that action.
Yeah.
And be,
What do great people do, right?
They do the little things every day, and those little things add up to this great goal, right? And it's really that simple. So I said, you know what? Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do. And conditioning, I'm running until I would throw up, right? Just to be in the front of the group, because I'm gonna separate myself somehow, right? Some of my teammates used to laugh at me, man. I used to go, I'd be throwing up, I'd be on my hands and knees puking, and then I'd like crawl up to the line and stand up and just kind of like will myself, to be, I used to try to like work to exhaustion when we would condition.
I gotta ask this, because normally we don't ask this question towards the end of the interview of what does the best version of me mean when you hear this, but I think we're already in it. So let me ask you, when you hear best version of me, what does that mean to you?
The best version of me means, am I defeating the man that I was yesterday? Right? Because, all right, I've set a standard here, whether it's with childcare, whether it's with sports, whether it's with business, whether it's with finance. Am I doing something to make myself better than I was yesterday? And if I can wake up and I can say, yes, I'm getting better today than I was, and that's the best version of myself. Because I think that's a fluid thing, being the best version of yourself, right? Because, again, things will happen, and you'll have to work through devastating things, right? That you never expected. And it's those things that you don't expect that it's like, that's when you find out what you're about.
Because the nurse goes, if you don't bring him based on what you're telling me, he's gonna die. I was able to blend in with Snoop and Ice Cube because, you know, again, we all came from those hoods. Everything my mom warned me about, she was right. I was dead for 4 seconds. He goes, I'm hearing all these rumors that you're doing this and that. He goes, what are you doing? You have a mafia in here in the school? You know, I've been shot, and I've been stabbed, I've had some things happen to me in my life, you know, and that was one of the visions that me and Snoop had about building the song to unify, you know, blacks and Mexicans. Then we were living 5 of us, 6 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment in Bellflower, you know, so it's like I've known what it's like to have everything and have nothing.